In a magical forest, filled with flowers that giggle and leaves that whisper secrets to one another, there lived a tiny yet wise owl named Pip. Now, Pip was no ordinary owl. She had big dreams, an even bigger heart, and a passion for storytelling that knew no bounds. Pip's home was the grandest tree of them all, a majestic oak that reached up towards the sky like a ladder to the clouds. It was known throughout the forest as the Story Tree, and its branches were like strong, gnarled arms that cradled Pip's cozy nest made of soft moss, shiny pebbles, and feathers shed by passing hawks. Every day Pip would wake up before the sun peeked over the horizon and shake the dew from her feathers. Then she would spread her wings, take a deep breath, and let out a loud hoot that echoed through the forest. This was her signal to the world, her announcement that it was time for a brand new adventure. As the forest creatures stirred from their slumber, they would gather around the Story Tree, each hoping to be the first to hear Pip's latest tale. There were bushy-tailed squirrels, grumpy badgers, shy deer, and even a family of pixies who lived in the hollow of the tree next door. Pip's stories were legendary. She could talk for hours about brave knights who battled fearsome dragons, clever foxes who outsmarted hungry wolves, sparkling mermaids who lived in deep, dark oceans, and playful cloud sprites who floated across the sky. Her tales were full of magic and wonder, and she told them in such a way that you could almost taste the adventures with your tongue and feel them with your fingertips. But as much as Pip loved sharing her stories, as much as the forest creatures loved listening to them, something was missing. You see, Pip always told her stories to the wind. She would stand on the highest branch of the Story Tree and let her words drift through the trees, over the hills and far, far away. Sometimes she would imagine that the wind would carry her stories to faraway lands where they would be cherished and treasured. But most days, she worried that her stories were going unheard. One day, Pip decided that she couldn't take it anymore. She wanted someone, anyone, to listen to her stories and appreciate all the hard work she put into them. So she flew down to the forest floor and sat on a nearby toadstool. With a deep breath, she spread her wings and let out a loud hoot. "Who here wants to hear a story?" she called out. But the only response she got were a few birds taking off from the trees and a family of rabbits disappearing into their burrows. Pip sighed sadly. Maybe no one wanted to hear her stories after all. Just then, a little bluebird landed on the branch above Pip. "What's wrong, little owl?" she asked, tilting her head to the side. Pip poured her heart out to the bluebird, telling her how she loved to tell stories but had no one to listen. The bluebird listened patiently, and when Pip was finished, she said, "Why don't you go find someone who wants to hear your stories? After all," she added with a wink, "a story is nothing without an audience." And so, with a newfound determination, Pip took off from the Story Tree and flew as far as she could. She soared over rivers and mountains, through valleys and plains, and even above fluffy white clouds. But no matter where she went, she couldn't find anyone who wanted to sit down and listen to her stories. Discouraged, she finally landed on a nearby fence post and ruffled her feathers. Maybe the bluebird was right. Maybe a story is nothing without an audience. But where could she find an audience who loved stories as much as she did? As Pip sat there thinking, she didn't notice 3 children who were hiding behind a bush not too far away. These weren't any ordinary children. Oh no. Their names were Leo, Mia, and Sam, and they had a passion for adventure that rivaled Pip's own. They loved exploring the woods behind their houses and had been searching for something exciting to happen ever since they could remember. Suddenly, Leo gasped. "Look," he whispered to his friends. "I think I see a magical talking owl." The 3 children crept closer to Pip, their eyes wide with wonder. As they got closer, they could hear Pip's soft voice telling a tale about a young squirrel who dreamed of flying. The children were mesmerized and sat down right at the bottom of the tree, eager to hear every single word. When Pip finished her story, she turned around and saw them sitting there with huge smiles on their faces. "Hello?" she hooted softly, a little surprised. "Did you like my story?" Leo clapped his hands. "It was the best story ever," he exclaimed. "We love your stories, Pip," said Mia, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Can you tell us another one?" Sam, who was usually the quietest of the three, suddenly found his voice. "Yes, please, Pip," he said. "Tell us about the brave knight who fought the dragon." Pip's heart soared like a kite in the wind. Finally, someone who wanted to hear her stories. She couldn't believe her luck. From that day on, the children became regulars at Pip's story time. They would bring her little gifts like shiny pebbles, colorful feathers, and even a four-leaf clover that they found growing in the forest. And Pip would reward them by telling them even more amazing tales. She told them about mischievous fairies who hid in flower buds and played tricks on unsuspecting bees, about a wise old turtle who knew the secret language of the stars, and even about a brave knight who fought a fearsome dragon. The children loved listening to Pip's stories, but they also loved coming up with their own. They would take turns telling Pip about their adventures at school, their dreams for the future, and even their fears and worries. Pip listened patiently and offered words of encouragement and advice whenever she could. One day the children arrived at the story tree with a big surprise for Pip. They had drawn a picture of her perched on a branch, surrounded by all the animals she had told stories to. Below the picture they had written, "To the best storyteller in the whole wide world." Pip's eyes welled up with tears of joy. She had never felt so appreciated and loved. From that day on, Pip continued to tell her stories, but now she had an audience who loved them just as much as she did. She learned that a story is always better when you have friends to share it with, and that the best stories are the ones that come from the heart. And just like Pip, we want to hear from you. Did you love this story? If so, you can become our friend and hear all our adventures by clicking the follow button. And if you have a great idea for a story or want to share your thoughts, leave us a nice little note in the comments below. Your kind words and ideas make our stories shine even brighter. Until next time, keep listening and keep believing in the magic of stories.